Lights keep going up and down over there, and the guys go. But somebody in here is responsible. I'm talking about this month. It's the negative energy, yes. In her book, The Myths of Happiness, What Should Make You Happy But Doesn't, What Shouldn't Make You Happy But Does, Sonia Lyubomirsky tells the story of a man by the name of who all his life growing up wanted to be a doctor and worked very hard going through school. Graduated at the top of every class he was in: high school, college, graduate school, medical school. And came out and decided he wanted to be a plastic surgeon. Quickly became very successful, became one of the most sought after and wealthy plastic surgeons in the country. She says Jack and his wife enjoyed their life, spent time Jack's professional successes as his practice capitalized on his specialty by developing a practice that catered specifically to high net worth socialites in New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Am I coming in and out?
You are.
There's all kinds of funky stuff happening today. He says, well, the money came in and the money went out. In a span of 4 years, he bought 2 vacation homes, 2 sports cars, and a cruising yacht. I had more dough than I knew what to do with. I mean, literally, my wife and I wanted for nothing. First class everything. Rare wine, diamond rings, country club. I was making reams of money. But by his own telling, he was the most unhappy man in the world. Got to the point where he stopped taking on new clients, and he started lying to his wife about the number of patients he was seeing. And he found himself having difficulty in the morning getting out of bed. He hated his job. When she asked Jack about the specific moment he realized that his money and success were no longer making him happy, he said it came in waves, but the one moment that stood out was after several consultations with a woman, she paid him $75,000 as a down payment if he would do surgery for her on Christmas Day as a special present for her husband. I remember looking at the money she gave me and staring at it and realizing that I just didn't want to be here anymore. And so the question for the day is, why isn't Jack happy? Well, it turns out there are several probable reasons, according to the author of this book, all relating to those myths of happiness. And 3 of the biggest myths surrounding happiness involve our belief that happiness is increased if we have more status, if we have a dream job, and of course, if we have lots of money. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. And I want to begin by addressing one of the most frequent myths about money and happiness, that money cannot buy happiness. In fact, that's not true. To a point. When we are poor, money does buy a measure of happiness. That is, she says, when our basic needs for adequate food, safety, health care, and shelter are not met, an increase in income makes a much larger difference for us than when we are relatively comfortable. Another way to put it is that money makes us happier if it keeps us from being poor. Wealthy people routinely report in surveys that they are happy with their life, and more happy than those who are poor or poorer. But this is where it gets a little murky, or begins to get a little murky, because the problem is when you delve into the details of their lives, their daily lives, their work and relationships, their stress levels, and their worries, they are no happier than people who are poor. But most of us don't care. we want to be them. We want to be wealthy. We think that that will make us happier. We also think that there are those dream jobs out there, that if we just had this dream job that pays great and has all these amenities, then we will be happy. In her book, she has a very interesting story about being invited to spend some time with employees at Google, which she says for many people is absolutely a dream job. Google employees are extremely well paid. They have all kinds of amenities at work. They have a free hot lunch and a free dinner every day, and an abundance of other food. They have guest authors who are invited in to visit and speak all the time. They have plenty of games and toys that they can go and leave their work for a time and go into a game room and play drums or play guitars or play any kind of electronic game you can imagine. They are invited to bring their pets to work with them. And she says, when you talk to them, everybody who works there says this was the dream job. Can't imagine wanting to work anywhere else in the world. But when you interview them, she says, you find that after they get there for a while, suddenly they are no more happy than they were before. And they have complaints like, she says, tell me we're not having crab cakes again today for lunch. There's all kinds of grumbling that goes on there. The problem with measuring our happiness and wanting to be happy, she says, is that we routinely make certain mistakes when we think about happiness. And one mistake that we make is that we routinely overestimate how happy we will be with some change for the better in our current circumstances. We think that once we have that job or once we have that status, that title, that income, that we will be set. And in fact, she says, there is every evidence in the world to suggest that shortly after we have attained our dream, we will be no happier than we were before. And she tells the story of one of her colleagues who attained one of the most prestigious awards in his field and had been working in his academic life towards this title, this award, for years and years and years, and he finally got it. And she talked to him afterwards and asked him how long it made him happy, and he said it made him happy for about 1 hour. And then he began to wonder why it had seemed so important for so long to get there. I mentioned this last week. It turns out we all have this baseline of happiness. Some of us are more happy by nature, some of us are less happy by nature. Anytime we attain something or get something new, our measure of happiness goes up. It makes us happy for a brief time, and then we inevitably retreat to our baseline, to the level of happiness we were before. We also routinely think that having more things will make us happier. She said this is an enormous American thing. Americans think that having more things will make us happier. She says, a mountain of research has shown that materialism, in fact, depletes happiness, threatens satisfaction with our relationship, harms the environment, renders us less friendly, likable, and empathetic, and makes us less likely to help others and contribute to our communities. Because the more we have, the more isolated we become from other people. Materialism is, in essence, just another drug addiction. The more we have, the more we want. And it's very difficult to step out of that once we get into that addiction. The final mistake that people make, or the final one at least I want to talk about today, is that people routinely underestimate their capacity to be happier with themselves in their current circumstances. We actually can move the baseline of happiness up and become more happy within ourselves. How? By using what resources we have, which include money and time, to accumulate experiences, not possessions. This is a big, in the research that she does, this is a big difference that she sees and makes. That people make the mistake of thinking that when you have more things, you will be happy. But in fact, when you have more things, as soon as you get something new, it sits on your shelf or on your wall or in your driveway for a while, and it makes you happy for a little while. And then pretty soon it's just routine. You don't even notice it's there anymore. As opposed to when you use your resources to accumulate experiences of being with people and going to interesting places and things like that. When we own something, it is outside us. It's on our shelf, it's on our shoulders, it's in our living room. When we experience something, it is inside us. And it becomes this accumulating bunch of experiences that we have that help over time to make us happier people. It's inside our minds and our memories. The happiest people are those who are most skilled at wringing experiences out of everything in which they invest their time and their money. Whether it's a guitar, a plane ticket, a picture book, a dress, a camera, cake decorating lessons, or running shoes. It's the experiences, not the things, that will make us more happy. The other thing she talks about is that too many people routinely get bored in their lives. They get out of school, they get a job, and all of a sudden they reach this plateau point. And they stop growing. They lose a growing edge in their lives. People become unhappy when they stagnate and stop growing, which is a danger for lots of people who have a job that perhaps isn't that meaningful or fulfilling, and who then come home and park themselves in front of the TV, and who literally and in their lives just sit there. We need to be growing to be happy. We need to have a growing edge, something in our lives where we are working at learning some new skill or new craft, whether it's within our job or whether it's something else, where we have goals that stretch us and help us grow. Goal pursuit in and of itself imparts structure and meaning to our daily lives, creating obligations, deadlines, and timetables, as well as opportunities for mastering new skills and for interacting with others. In the course of our pursuits, we may attain a sense of purpose in our lives, feeling the efficacy over our progress and mastery over our time. All of these things make people happy. So one of the biggest reasons why people find themselves not happy anymore is because they've just stagnated. They stopped growing. They look around their lives, and in no area of their lives do they have any kind of a growing edge where they are constantly learning something new, constantly challenging themselves to grow in some area of their lives. Doing something meaningful also makes people happy. Remember Jack, the plastic surgeon? He went to see a therapist, and the therapist suggested to him that he was pretty selfish. And he thought about that for a little bit and came to an agreement with the therapist that, in fact, that he was pretty selfish. And so he began looking around at what he might do with his time and his skill and all of his resources, and he started going on medical mission trips to poor countries to do plastic surgery, not for rich socialites, but for people who were poor, who were born with cleft palates or other birth abnormalities. And he absolutely loved it. And he went on to found and fund a whole team of surgeons and medical support staff to do this work, and it absolutely changed his life. Being a part of something that is bigger than us, that is focused on helping others instead of just taking care of ourselves, provides meaning for our lives and makes us happier. You sure? In a study, finally for today, appropriately titled Very Happy People, researchers sought out the characteristics of the happiest 10% of people they could find in their research. Do they all live in warm climates? This is from the writing. Do they all live in warm climates? Are they all wealthy? Are they all physically fit? Turns out there was one and only one characteristic that distinguished the happiest 10% from everyone else. It was the strength of their social relationships. A study of well-being among 1,600 Harvard undergraduates found the same thing. Social support was a far greater predictor of happiness than any other factor, more than GPA, family income, SAT scores, age, gender, or race. In fact, the correlation between social support and happiness was off the charts. The more social support you have, the happier you are. It turns out that the happiest people are those who don't buy into the myth of happiness. That it's going to take some change in the future in their life circumstances, a new job or winning the lottery or getting some big job promotion to make them happy. Every one of us has the capacity within ourselves to move that baseline of happiness. And this is where I think it shades. Last week I was talking about the difference between joy and happiness. And this is where it kind of shades into that area of what makes us joy, which is that more lasting form of happiness. It's deeper. It's looking at yourself and asking a couple questions. And one of them is there a growing edge anywhere in my life anymore? I mean, what am I learning? Where am I growing? Where am I being challenged in my life to learn something new, to do something I haven't done before that keeps me motivated to grow and to make myself a better person in some way or another? And that's one of the big questions to ask ourselves is where is our growing edge? Do we have a growing edge? And are we part of something that is meaningful? Are we a part of some community, some cause, something that is bigger than ourselves, where we are giving something of ourselves to other people so that somebody else's life is better because of what we are doing? Having something that is meaningful to us makes us happier. And social networks and social support. I tell you what, having a grandchild makes you a lot happier. Being a part of communities of faith, having circles of friends. Do we put as much time into cultivating networks of support, social support, as we do into putting time into our jobs or accumulating things? That's an important question to ask. And I'm not going to talk today about the other side of the equation. Actually, Jan talked about it well in the children's story, about the things that we think will come down the road that will make us unhappy. We don't want that illness to come. We don't want to lose someone in our family. We don't want to lose our job. All those things that we dread in our lives that we know that if they come along, that we will be less happy. Well, the truth of the matter is that when you actually talk to people who have gone through these things, obviously their circumstances in life have changed dramatically often. And they would wish that it hadn't happened. And yet when you measure their happiness, they're often happier, because having something bad happen tends to focus one's efforts and time and emotional strength, and people give up the things that aren't important and focus on the things that are important, and tend to find afterwards that in fact they can be happy with whatever circumstances they now find themselves in. But probably the most important thing that she talks about in terms of getting ourselves prepared for that inevitable time, which will come to us in one way or another, is to have that strength in social networks, to be surrounded by people, family, friends, communities that love us. Nothing makes more difference in terms of weathering the storms that come in our lives. So, we don't have to wait to be happy. We all have within ourselves the capacity to find areas in our life where we can, with what we have right now, make ourselves more happy by taking care of ourselves better in some different important way. Next week, I'm going to talk a little bit more focused about the message that our culture sends. And what I'd like you to do this week, this is your assignment when you go out. Pay attention to the TV, if you're watching TV, or to a billboard or something like that, or something you're listening to, and what in the commercials, in the shows, on the signs, what are the messages you see about happiness? And not only should you pay attention to them, but this week, if you see a commercial that you think has a wrong message about happiness, send it to me. Send me the link or talk about the commercial. And what I would like to do, if I get some response from this, is next week to spend some time looking at some of this stuff, the messages we get through the media about what makes us happy. So that's your assignment. Thank you for listening. Amen.